spreadsheet. Well, I'll tell the story about this this thing we've got going on. So a few years ago, as I probably mentioned, my best friend moved next door to me, and she did that by buying a house. And she asked me when she bought the house if I would help her set up a spreadsheet so she could see what the different interest rate programs were from her bank, in comparison also with different amounts that she might be able to buy the house for. So when she went to the mortgage person, these were the possible programs that the mortgage person thought she could get her bought in. And what she was going to be eligible for relied on a bunch of stuff in her personal life, which we don't really need to get into. We just had these for today. Thanks to the coronavirus, these interest rates are a lot lower. She also was eligible for the Vermont Housing Finance Association Assist Program. They put a lien on your property for $5,000 and give you $5,000 interest-free. And when you sell your house, they get their $5,000 back. So she had that for a down payment. She was also probably going to get some money from her parents, but she didn't want to count on that, so we're not including that in this story. The people who are selling the house were asking $129,000. The property taxes to the town are $3,050 a year, which had to be put in escrow. How many people here have bought a house? One. Okay. So if you don't know what that means, what happens is the bank wants to make sure that if you stop paying on things, that they get your house first because they're giving you the most money. But if you don't pay your property taxes, the town will take your house. And the last thing the bank wants is the town to take the house that you owe them money on. It's very hard for them to get paid when you're not in the house anymore. So if you're an at-risky kind of person, which a lot of people buying their first houses are, they make you pay them 1/12 of your property tax every month. And then when the property taxes are due, they pay them for you. So you giving them that property tax money is called putting it in escrow. That's what that's all about. So it'll be part of her payment when she's making these payments. She was approved to borrow $120,000 in the mortgage plus her $25,000 assist program. And because she's not putting 20% down on the house, which on $129,000 is almost $26,000. She didn't have $26,000, so she has to pay personal mortgage insurance, or PMI, and that is just protection for the bank, and that's $125 a month. As soon as she has 20% equity in her house, either by paying down the mortgage or doing improvements on her house or something that happens that makes the house values skyrocket, she can apply to she can get her house appraised and apply to get that personal mortgage insurance removed. So we're going to create some tables to show the cost per month for the mortgage plus property tax, and the mortgage plus property tax plus PMI for the 4 different interest rates and purchase prices between $105,000 and $125,000 in $5,000 increments. So she's hoping maybe she could get the house for $110,000. Between $110,000 and $125,000, well, $130,000. 129 is close enough to 130. So we have a couple of things. We have 2 different things that are variable. What are the things that are variable? Right. So what we might offer for the house. So that is 105. Well, technically 110, but borrowing 100. No, actually offering 105. That's right. To offering $125,000. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. We have 5 different possibilities for that. What else do we have that's variable that we're comparing?
Would it be the interest rate?
Interest rates. What values do we have that are fixed?
The PMI.
The PMI, which is $125 a month. Property taxes is what, $30.50?
$30.50
a year. One thing that's not on here that I was lame about is the number of payments. Although technically this wouldn't have to be fixed, she was looking at a 30-year mortgage.
The assist program?
Yes, or down payment. I think that's it. All right. So we're gonna build a spreadsheet. What I have all traditionally done is I made a table for each of the interest rates. And I did on the table the possible purchase prices across the top. So that's what we'll build together. Let's go ahead and open a spreadsheet. All right, we're gonna open up a new blank workbook in Excel. You may do this online if you want. There are tools that we're going to use in the installed cell that will work just fine on your Mac, don't worry. So it's best probably to use the one full-blown one. Everyone who wants a sheet open, have one open? Okay. So I've done this enough times. I actually really like to make my table for the each interest rate first, just the first one. I'm just going to put a placeholder, and A1 I'm going to type program, and I will make a table for the different programs in a moment. And then in B1 I'm going to write interest, because that's just where it's going to be. Now we have to figure we're going to have labels across the top of the different purchase prices and labels down the side for the different things that we're going to do. So I'm going to leave A2 blank because there's nothing really to put there. Across the top of my table, my first possible purchase price is $105,000. Now there's a way that I don't have to type all of these, and it's using the Autofill tool. It's pretty awesome. In cell C2, I'm going to put $110,000 because I have to set a pattern. I'm going to format them in a moment. So yeah, that's a great question. A lot of times when I'm entering data, I do the data, and if it hasn't been formatted, then after I get the data in, I put the formatting in. If you have a hard time making sure you wrote the right number of zeros, you might want to do the formatting first. That's okay. After I have done 2, I can then let Excel do the next 3 for me because I've created a pattern. If I select B2 and C2 by clicking on B2, the big white plus sign, and dragging over to C2, I can then grab my little autofill handle and go to the right 3 spaces, and Excel says, oh, you want a pattern of adding $5,000 to each one of these, and when I let go, it will have copied my pattern over, and this works for 5 things or 50 things. I'm going to go ahead and Okay, if you have number signs showing, it means that your cell width isn't wide enough to show the value. So go ahead and double click up top, because when I go to put the dollar signs in there, actually it went and adjusted the width for me. I'm going to get rid of those decimal places because I don't need them. If you narrow up the column, see how I get number signs in there? That's because I haven't made the columns wide enough to show the full values. That's all. So when you get number signs, that's what that means. If you get other number hashtags and bang signs and words in there, it means you have other errors. So just a quick thing on autofill. I'm going to open another sheet. Excel does all sorts of wonderful things with autofills. Besides numbers, like if you wanted to make a little sheet with the days of the month down the side, you could type 1, 2, and then drag down to, this is March, 31 days. We can get the numbers 1 through 31 very quickly. It also does things like days. I could, let me actually leave that back up there. The 1st of March was Sunday. I could type Sunday and Monday, and Excel will recognize days of the week as consecutive values. And I can double click and auto fill in down what each day of the week is there. It also works with months. Now you can do three letter months. It recognizes that as well as the fully written out month. So it would recognize that as consecutive months. Oh, I can't double click because I don't have values next to it. So there we could do that. You could also do things like I have tax payments due to the state of Vermont every quarter. So I owe something in April, and then May, June, July. So if I do April, July, it'll recognize quarters. April, July, October, January, April, July, October, January. You could add years into there and it'll do those increments. You could do, specific dates, it'll increment those. So any kinds of values that it understands in a series, it can duplicate. It can even duplicate now. If you have older versions of Excel, this doesn't work. But if I type item 1 and then item 2, it will see the value in the text and it'll duplicate that. If you have older versions of Excel, it might not do that. So they don't have to be consecutive. You just have to set up what the series is going to look like, and it can go from there for you. So that's the fun of autofill. I want to delete that sheet. Right. I want to go back to this. All right. Down the left side of this, down the left side, I want to know how much just the mortgage is going to be. Now, I usually type just the words first, and once I get them all in, I'll adjust the width of the columns. So I want the mortgage plus property tax. So, right, mortgage. Excel does have a spell check, but it doesn't have an auto spell check. Mortgage plus tax. We did the mortgage plus mortgage tax and PMI separate just because it was a nice motivation for her to work on getting her equity down to 20%, to have 20%. All right, so we see that mortgage and mortgage tax and PMI don't fit. So I like just double clicking between A and B and adjusting that. Feel free to make things look fancy. You hover in between the two column letters till you get that bar with arrows both ways, and double click, and that will make it automatically the width of the widest thing in the column and no bigger. Right, so I formatted this by selecting those cells. Of course, after I did the autofill, it was already selected, but you'll have to select them. And then in the number group here, there's a little counting number format. Now, when I first click that, it gives it decimal places, and I have to use the decrease decimal tool to get rid of those. I will tell you that that was part of the homework. So it's important to do the reading and the homework so we can keep up. Excel is gonna have a lot of stuff to do in class, and I'm relying on people to do their homework so that we can cover the advanced stuff in class that's harder to get from the reading. I do think that probably 50% of building spreadsheets from scratch well is the planning phase. And that comes with a little bit of experience to know what works nice and what's pretty. But breaking out a piece of paper and sketching things is totally okay. It's totally okay. You don't have to do everything on the computer. Good now? All right. So, of course. So we're going to put our fixed values over here in a table, but what we'll do is we'll copy this table down 3 more times. We're not there yet. And we'll put our fixed values over here. I'm going to use column G as a little bit of a spacer. I don't need it a full width, so I'm going to click on that line between G and H, where I get the vertical bar and the 2 arrows, and just drag that over a little bit. Yeah, go the other way, though, so you make G narrow, so it's just perfect. Awesome. I don't know what to put up here. I think I'll just write mortgage data. And what's the first thing we have? We can put PMI. PMI in H2, and that's 125. And I'm going to go ahead and use column J to remind myself that this is monthly. This is going to be important when we build our formulas, because the formula for payment is relying on things all being the same term, monthly or yearly or whatever we're going to use. So we might have to add some additional multiplication or division to make things work right. Also on our list, we have our property tax. And that's $3,050, and it's annual. I don't know why that's bold. I realize that that's covered up, but I'm going to wait till I have all of my stuff in. Otherwise, I'm constantly adjusting. It's not I guess it's not horrible. I can't keep constantly adjusting. What else we have? Our number of payments. I'm going to write number of years. I'm going to put 30. And that might be a value that I mess around with when we're done with the table, with the whole spreadsheet, about exploring whether a 15-year mortgage will work, or if we really need to shop for a 40-year mortgage. 15 years, of course, will make the payment higher, but it'll also mean we pay a lot less interest. And the last one, down payment. If you are bored while people are still typing in values, feel free to make it pretty. You could merge and send our mortgage data over stuff. And we might as well go ahead here and make a little table with the programs that we can use and their interest rates. So when you put in your percentage for that, you want to go ahead and type the percent sign when you're done. So if I want 4.00%, if I'm sure to type the percent in, that will treat that number like 0.04. And since I do have percentages that are 0.75 and 0.25, I want to go ahead and use those significant digits, even though this would work just fine as 4% without the .00. Oh, good. And I forgot to put the 0 for the move conventional, but it fixed it for me. Excel is not smart for doing it. It's guessing what you want. It does not always guess right. Just like Alexa and Google don't always guess right. It's just an educated guess. Huh. Well, I don't know why yours is changing to dollars. So the question is, how do I keep the percent sign? What you can do is, after you get it all done, just to go ahead and select them, and the percent sign is one of the formatting choices there in number.
Yeah.
Make sure you just have the right number of digits. So I would leave them alone while you're typing them with dollars. It must be picking up some formatting from up above. Did that work?
Find out in a minute.
Pardon?
That'll find out in a minute.
Yeah. When it changes it to dollars, is it changing it to $0.04?
$4.0.
Well, that's not going to work.
What?
I'm going to come look. I would maybe, so select the cells that you're putting that in.
Like every other.
That is very strange. Select all of those. Go ahead and hit the little percent thing. All right, now type new numbers. Type 4. Enter. Take it down to 3.75. It's going to say 4. Don't worry about it. Keep
Okay.
going. 3.5. That's going to say 4 too. What's the last one? That will say 3. Now select all of them and increase your decimal. Just rounding them. That's what it did. So one of the things that happened, I don't know why this was happening, but I'll kind of demonstrate what it did. Somehow, some of these cells had dollar formatting on them. So when she typed 4%, well, I hit the. Did you hit the percent sign?
I did, like on keyboard, I said percentage.
Where? So type 4, it's going to give me $4. And then if I try to change that to a percent, that's going to be 400. So what I suggested was we'll select all of it, we'll format it as percent, and here we'll type 4, 3.75. Now when Hannah typed 3.75, it rounded it because it was just giving us that first digit. And I was like, keep going. It's still rounding. Then we have to come back and select them and increase decimal. Does everybody have those tables set up? Now comes the real fun part. Woohoo! All right, the first thing I want to do is I wrote that word program up there, but I want it to say my first loan program. So I could type Advantage Conventional, but ultimately I'd like to be able to change these things here and have my tables update. So I'm going to set cell A1 to equal what's in H8. And if you want to know what this cell address is, if you click on it, in the name box, it'll say which cell you have active. If you select a range of cells, it'll just tell you the top left one. So here in A1, I'm going to type an equal sign. And then I'm going to click on H8, and I'm going to hit enter. And that's going to put that word up there for me, which I'm very happy about. I'm going to do same for the interest rate in B1. I'm going to type equals, and I'm going to click on this I1. I'm going to reference this interest rate in my formulas. That way, when I haven't closed on the house in a month and these numbers change and the mortgage broker sends me new numbers, I can just update these numbers here. Everything else will update. Referencing this cell from this table is trickier than referencing that cell in this table.
How did you get the advanced conventional?
Yep. In cell A1, I typed an equal sign, and then I clicked on the word Advantage Conventional over there in H8. Perfect. Now hit enter or tab. And then in B1, I typed equals, and I clicked on I8, and I hit enter. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to calculate the mortgage right here in cell B3. And I gave you the payment function. So this is a somewhat advanced function, but it's a very common function, and it's a good way to just kind of explore how functions are built. We've seen some, but what a function is it's an advanced formula that instead of doing all the cell references and all of the calculation keys, it does it all for you by typing the name of the function and giving it proper arguments. And what I wrote on this sheet, you could get in the help menu. So up under tell me what to do, if I typed payment and hit enter, the first thing it's going to come up with is the correct function for me, and it's the PMT function. And if you click on that, this text that's here will give you exactly what I put here on the document, except I didn't give you the examples. So there's some terms that go with this. The first term is syntax. And syntax simply means this is how we will write things. Things have to be in particular, logical, neat, organized order, and everything always goes the same every time, and Excel will know what you want to do. And the syntax is, of course, all formulas and functions start with an equal sign. And then for functions, we write the name of the function, which this is PMT. And then all functions will also have a set of parentheses, an open parentheses and a closed parentheses. And then if there are values that it needs to calculate the function, those are called the arguments. And arguments are separated by comma. So far in the sum function, we've just done one argument, add up the numbers that are in this range of cells. But you could have multiple range of cells that you add up. So you'd give one range and then a comma and then the next range and then a comma and so on. In this case, we have rate, which is the interest rate. And down below it, it says whether things are required and a description of what it is. The number of periods, that's also required. How many payments are we going to make? The PV, which is the principal value or the present value. And that is also required. So for us, our interest rate is going to be based on this 4%. Our number of periods is going to be based on 30 years. Our principal value is going to be based on how much we're offering for the house. And there we go. Then we get into some optional items, the future value and the type. So the future value is what you want to have happen after the last payment is made. Usually, in the case of this house, we want to pay the house off. So we're going for 0. What kind of loan would we have where the future value is not 0?
Well, you wouldn't want a car to be 0.
Okay, so a car is kind of where I'm going. Normally, if you buy a car, you would go to 0 because they want you to pay it off. But lease a car, exactly. The way a lease works is they say you buy this 2021 Honda, and 2 years from now, if you put no more than 12,000 miles a year on it, and there's no damage to it, you don't smoke in it, we'll give you this amount for it. We'll guarantee to buy it back from you for this amount. And then you pay on the depreciation of the car, basically. There's also a thing with homes, especially in construction loans. You might get a real high rate up front, but only for 6 months to buy the property and stuff. And then they expect you after 6 months to refinance the whole thing with a completely built house. So that's another type of loan where you might not be paying on the whole amount of the loan, but that's because at some point you're expected to refinance it. So those are times when you wouldn't have a future value. Most of our calculations, though, we're going to have 0, which is why they make it optional. We're just going to assume it's 0. The other type indicates whether you make your first payment at the beginning of the payment period or at the end of a payment period. So when you buy a car, you usually don't make your first payment on the car until at least 30 days after you drive the car away. So what's happening is you have interest accruing until you make that first payment. When you buy a house, though, you actually make your first mortgage payment the day you close on the house. So that's making the payment at the beginning. No interest is accrued until you've made your first payment. So our type's actually going to be 1. And in order to have the type, we either need to type a 0 where the future value is, or we do definitely need to have the commas in our formula. We don't actually have to put a value there. I tend to put a value, but it's not required. The commas are required because we must follow the syntax. All right, so that was a big, long explanation of that. But understanding how to build a payment function will help you with any other kind of function that you're dealing with, including some really complicated ones. So we'll do our first function here. And the easiest way to build functions is in Excel. This doesn't work in Google. Google will give you prompts on the bottom, but not a full dialog box to work with. We're going to, next to the formula bar, you see this little thing that says FX, insert function. If you click that, it asks you, what function do you want? You could search for a function. So I could type payment into search for a function and hit go. And I can see that PMT for me is the 4th one. Another way to find the payment function is to select a category. And this would be in financial, bless you. And then I'd have to scroll down to the P's, but I'd find the payment function. And anyway, we want PMT to be selected, and we're going to say OK. And this dialog box, if you're new to spreadsheets, is a lifesaver. Does anybody not have the dialog box open who wants it? So here we can build, we can even put functions in these boxes. Fortunately for us, we only have to do formulas. So our rate, and we're in the rate box. Down here, it says, is the interest rate per period for the loan? For example, use 6% divided by 4 for quarterly payments at 6% APR. So our interest rate, we're going to be in that rate box. We'll click on B1 where we have the interest rate, but that's an interest rate for the year. How many payments are we making in a year? 12. So we'll have to type a division sign. I like to use the operational characters that are right here in the number pad. Then I don't have to remember whether it's the one next to the shift key or the one over the enter key, but it is the one next to the shift key. And we'll type divided by 12. And when we do that over here to the right, we can see it actually calculates out what it's expecting that value to be. So it would be 0.33333% a month.
What did you do, B2?
I'm sorry. No, B1. B1's where our interest rate is, divided by 12. Did everyone get that? All right. Well, then we'll put our insertion point here at the end per. Now, these things are named weird because they're all functions themselves, by the way. You can calculate the number of periods with all the other financial functions. So you can calculate any of these if you have all the other variables. So our number of periods is our number of years times what?
Times 12.
Times 12. 360 payments. The amount that we want to borrow is, the number of years is 30, but we're calculating the total number of payments. We're not making one payment a year, we're making monthly payments.
So we're doing 30 times 12.
So yeah, I'm gonna select I4 times 12, just in case I wanna change this to a 25-year mortgage or a 40-year mortgage. Anytime I have the value somewhere on my worksheet, I want to use a cell reference. And I'm going to tell you that in your homework all the time. So I have I4 times 12. Times is the little asterisk over the 9. 12 payments a year. All right, our principal value is, or present value is how much we're buying the house for, which is in B2 for this part of the table, minus what? Our down payment? Our down payment. Click on the down payment cell though, because if mom and dad loan us a little more money, we might be able to increase that down payment. And then we only have to change that one and all of the other calculations will update for us. So we should see over here to the right, 0.003333, 360, and 100,000. Now you can leave future value blank, but I'm going to put 0 in there. And for type, we have to put 1. And you'll notice that this comes up to negative $475.83. That's okay. So this is, we're going to say okay, and we're going to look at it up there. The reason that spreadsheets do that is because when we owe something, it's considered in the deduct column. So it makes this value formatted as a negative number. If we would like this to express as a positive number because it's annoying to see all that red, I'm going to click up in the formula bar here to edit it. You're going to put a negative sign in between the equal and the function name. Negative times negative in math comes out positive, and that fixes how that expresses. So basically to borrow $100,000 for 30 years at 4% costs $475.83 a month. So we would like to copy this formula this way, but if we use our autofill and do that, we get a whole bunch of errors. And this is a good time to look at error tracking and how we build formulas. If we double click on this, our initial formula, we can see that Excel does a nice job of color coding all of our cell references. We are taking our interest rate, dividing it by 12. We're taking our number of years, multiplying it by 12. We are taking $105,000 and subtracting our down payment, and that's great. But when we come over to C1 and we look at that, what's happened? All our cell references have moved one cell to the right. And that is because by default, I don't know if you can see this over here, but Excel uses relative cell references by default. So B1, nothing around the column or the row values. If I want to reference a very specific cell, I can use an absolute cell reference with an E. Without an E is vodka. To anchor, I call it anchor because I think of the $ like an anchor. So I put a $B, $1. When I copy a formula with that kind of cell reference, the reference to that cell won't move. So if I go back to my original formula and I put a $ in front of the B and a $ in front of the 1, when I copy that this way, that will stay still referencing that cell there. I don't have to anchor the whole thing though. Really, when I copy over, I just don't want the column to move. The row will stay the same. So I could just put a $ in front of the B. And when I copy that, again, it'll reference the correct cell because I've anchored the column. And there are times that can be handy. That particular kind of cell reference is called a mixed cell reference. I'm going to write it way down here where no one can see it. So it could be like $B1 or it could be B $1, depending on what you don't want to move when you copy. So back in our original formula, what do we need to not move? We need the interest rate to not move to the side. We also need I4 to not move to the side when we copy over. So I'm going to put a $ in front of that. The other option you have is when you're editing this formula, the F4 key will move you through all of the mixed, absolute, and relative cell references. So by default, it's a relative cell reference. If we hit F4 once, it anchors both the column and the row. If you hit it again, it anchors just the row. If you hit it a third time, it anchors just the column. I know I'm doing that fast.
So is the $, the only symbol that anchors things?
Yes, when we're making cell references. Yep. And then over here for B2, we want this cell reference to move when we copy. So we don't want to do any anchoring, any absolute or mixed references for that. That needs to stay a relative cell reference, but our down payment does need to stay at the down payment. Now when I copy that over, everything copies over properly. So I have a $ in front of the B of B1, a $ in front of the I of I4, and a $, in front of the I of I5, but I've left the B2, C2, D2, E2, F2. Those get to move relative.
It worked for all of mine except one.
All right, which one didn't it work for? Okay, so hover over the bottom right till you get the black plus sign. Not that sign, that one. Click and drag. So that's all about, good job. That's all about those cursors. I know you can't really see them over there. I don't know if you want to take a picture. Okay, but when you're new to spreadsheets, those will help you get through things. I didn't cover that last night. My peer mentor told me that was something that really helped me. So yes.
It only didn't work for 3C on the absence value.
I'm gonna come look and see what's going on. Be careful when you're editing a formula. If you click on another cell, it'll try to put that cell in the formula for you. It'll try to insert that. So when we're done with entering stuff in a cell, You always want to hit enter or tab. Yeah. We need help. All right.
It like hints did like the two ends, but not the middle. And yeah, like
I got it.
You got it.
figured
All
it
right.
out, but it was
Okay, that's
it was
crazy.
like
So if you accidentally, here's another thing that you wouldn't know, and I just do without thinking about it. If you are in the middle of editing a formula and you accidentally hit on another cell and put it in there, escape will get you out of editing the formula without accepting your changes. All right? So don't feel you're stuck with those changes, just to escape and start over. Okay?
Yeah, Control Z doesn't do the same thing.
Control Z would be after you've made the mistake and hit enter. If you can hit Control Z, it'll take it back to the last formula. Is everyone caught up with where I am? When we ultimately are done with this table, we're going to make a copy of it and paste it down here. What's going to happen to all of these cell references where I only anchored the column? They're not going to be right? So there's another way to reference cells, and it is called using names. And you can name an individual cell, or you can name a range of cells, and then you treat the name just like you would a cell reference or a range of cells. And these can make your formulas much more readable. So to name a cell the easy way, if I want cell I2 to be called PMI so that I can use it in my formulas and use PMI instead of I2, I click on the cell, and in the name box where it says I2, I type PMI. I'm going to type capital P, capital M, capital I. So a couple things about naming. When you write names for cells or cell ranges, they can use letters, numbers, and I believe underscores. They cannot start with a number. They can be no more than 255 characters long. They cannot be a name that could be mistaken for a function or a cell reference. So we can't name something C125 because that could be a cell reference. So PMI is great. I'm going to click on cell I3, and where it says I3 in the name box, I'm going to write taxes. The other thing that happens is once you name something in the name box, when you pull down the arrow, you can click on any of the named things and it'll take you right to that item. So I've already done taxes and PMI. I could pull that down, click on one of them, it'll take me there. So if I have any questions about what a name is referencing, I can go look at that. For 30 here on I4, I'm going to call that term. And for the down payment, I'm going to call that capital D down, capital P payment. No spaces. If you screw that up, I will teach about name manager, but I have plans to teach you about that another day. So you should be able to pull down the little arrow and find 4 things. I don't care what you call them. You could call them Snickers, Kit Kat, and Milky Way as far as I'm concerned, but it won't be very meaningful.
It seems like even the ones that you redo are in that list. Does that matter?
Redo.
I mean, I named down payment twice, so both of those are in the list.
Yes. But you must have given it a different name each time.
Yeah.
When I click on down payment, I get down payment. But if I give it another name, like turkey, so turkey will still be in the list. You can go to the formulas tab, and in the middle we have the name manager that will list everything. You can select the one that you want to go away and hit the delete button. So this is on the formulas tab. The name manager is in the middle. If you literally click name manager, you can pick the one you want to delete, and then it just won't mess you up. It's also okay to have one cell named 2 things. But if you want to keep it clean, that might be the easiest thing to do. So we can use these names in our formula. Nothing's going to change. Let's go ahead and grab this first one. We're going to open that up. We don't want to change the reference to B1. But we do, for instead of I4, If we select that cell and we start typing, I called mine term. I start typing term. Down here in the prompts, you'll see a little name tag icon come up next to term, and you can click it. And notice it's red and my cell's red, just like the cell reference was red. I can also change that I-5 to down payment as I start typing down payment or whatever I called it. The little name tag will show up below. You double click on it so you get the right spelling. And now those words become part of our formula, and they make these functions much more understandable because you start to see in human words what we're working with. And that still works.
Can you go over that again?
I sure can. So the two things in here that I named were the term I-4. So I selected I-4. You'll notice if you double click on a cell reference, it'll select the whole cell reference, including any anchors. So double click on it and start typing the name that you gave it. You should see the name start to come up in the prompts below. Double click on the name, it'll insert the name for you instead of the cell reference. It'll still come up color coded, just like cell references do, but we're using names. Okay, did you call it term? No, you didn't call it term because it's not colored. So let's, terms, you called it. So double click on that, double click. There you go.
Oh,
That's why I always use the prompt and double click, because sometimes my brain doesn't remember how I called something. Right? Did I call my nickname or did I spell it all out? That's good. There you go. Now start typing whatever you called that. You'll start seeing your name come up. Perfect. You see how it's color coded? You know you got the right thing when it's color coded in the cell highlights. Names are fantastic when you have a 15-sheet workbook and you're referencing some range of cells 3 sheets away. You don't even have to remember where it is on the worksheet. You don't have to go there and click on it. You just start typing a name. Presto, it comes up. It's so nice. We're not working with 15-sheet workbooks in this class, but if you want to come to Bennington next year, I'm teaching spreadsheets at night on Monday in the fall.
A whole class just for spreadsheets.
A whole class just for spreadsheets, and we still don't cover everything in Excel.
That's great.
But we cover a lot of stuff. I'm also teaching it in Rutland, but I think that's even farther for you guys. All right, you should, if you've done that, make sure you copy that all the way over here to, copy that row over. For cell B4, we want the mortgage plus the property tax. This is a really simple formula. We're going to start with equals. Have we already calculated the mortgage at $105,000 purchase price? Yes. Let's click on it. And what are we going to do? We're going to add the property tax. Do we need to do anything to the property tax? How much is it monthly?
$3,050 divided by 12.
Right. So I named property taxes, so I'm going to start writing the taxes name divided by 12. Enter. And that I can also copy across. I'll go ahead and double click on that cell B4 so people can see the formula.
So for people that left it in the red, it would be minus, not plus.
Yes.
Just want to point that out.
Yes, definitely. Is names a new thing for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. Once I learned about names, I used them all the time. They're one of my favorite things in spreadsheets. Good? People seem happy. That's awesome. So have we already added up the mortgage and tax and we just need to add PMI? Yes, we did. So we'll hit equals and we'll select B4. And if you've changed things to all be positive, we're going to add. If you've left things good accounting and negative, you're going to subtract. And I called this PMI. So I can literally type PMI. If I start with O, it won't work. PMI. And as soon as that cell highlights and it shows that I've referenced that cell, I can hit enter and I can copy that across.
said false. Like, so I did tax and
All right. So you already did mortgage and tax in the cell above.
yeah.
That works. So you still would have to divide the tax by 12.
Oh, that's why I did.
That's okay. Go back, just delay it and divide by 12. And add plus. And then the PMI, which, did you call it PMI? Yeah.
Mine doesn't add up the same when I do it that way. If I spell it all out, it does.
Yeah, you have to spell the whole thing.
I mean, when I select B4 plus PMI, but if I do,
That B4 doesn't, plus PMI doesn't work. You didn't follow it.
it gives me, I was like, very good.
Okay, that's because you made the PMI be $5,000 over there. And it should be 100.
Yeah, no, I don't use it. Other than like looking at it.
Beautiful. Now it works, right? Yeah. Perfect. Oh, of course. Good job inspecting what you expect. We all make mistakes. All right, so now we only have to make 3 more tables. It's going to be so easy because we're going to copy. We're going to select cell A1, drag down to F5, copy however you like copying. You can do Control C, you can right click and hit copy. You can, in the Home tab, use the copy button in the clipboard tools. I'm going to go put my insertion point in A7 and I'm going to paste. And the only things I should have to change are in A7, I'm going to make a reference to Advantage Government. I'm going to make it equal to H9. And in B7, I'm going to make it equal to I9.
Whoa.
And now everything's all done. All the calculations are done for me. And now I have to put 2 more tables. I have 2 tables on here. I can copy both of them. Go to A13 and paste. It's upset with me. Try again. Copy, paste. And I just have to change those 4 cells. So this is why it's so important whenever it's possible to reference cells. We use cell references in our formulas rather than hard references, because if we typed actual values in here, when we change things, we'll have to change all the formulas. So there we are, 4 tables, the 3 different interest rate programs at 5 different possible purchase prices. Now we can mess around with, if we want to see if we can get a 40-year loan, we can change 30 to 40 and see how that changes. We can change it back. If mom and dad loan us another $5,000, we can put a $10,000 down payment. We can see how that changes stuff. Everything updates. Allows us to do some what if analysis.